So, Dr. Coppenger, you and I arrived in Moscow around the same time. And if you don't know, I had been following your work for a long time before I even got here, and was quite a big fan.
The prison years? I mean, you covered that? Okay. Yeah.
As I remember being in the Sword and Shovel with my family, and there you were. And I remember whispering to my wife, telling her, hey, it's Mark Coppenger. And I was just, kind of keeping my distance. If you don't know, I have very shy tendencies.
Didn't know.
And for some reason, we got acquainted that day. I think we shook hands and you got my name. And in a lot of ways, the rest is history. And just in this last year, it's been incredible building a friendship with you and your beloved wife, Sharon. It's been rich. So personally, I just want to say thank you for.
Well, that's very kind of you.
Everything.
And thank you. I wish that I could have written, well, even now as well as you do. But at your age, I'm thinking. I heard one old pastor say, "Wish he could be charismatic for just one weekend." Being silly about it, but so I wish I could write like you just one weekend. But so the honor's mine, man.
Absolutely.
Great to be with you.
And in my writing, I'm just trying to be like you when I grow up.
Sure. Be careful.
That's my goal with all of this.
Thanks.
But what has this year been like as you reflect on everything you've experienced and everything you've seen? What's your general synopsis on your experience at NSA and life in Moscow?
Yeah, sure. Well, we pinch ourselves. I mean, I retired from teaching full-time seminary in 2019.
Wow, yeah.
And then I was tapped to be an interim pastor for a year and doing writing. But, at age 76, if someone asks you to say silent prayer, you're honored. I mean, so to get a call out of the blue, and I guess it was late April, saying, could you show up in August and teach 8 courses? Okay, so here we are, and it has been. We just pinch ourselves. I mean, this is the most immersive experience. I mean, I've taught in a lot of different places, but you don't just come in and lecture. It's a whole way of life. It's a culture, and in a good way. I am really exhausted. I have to say, I started writing a few things down here, and by the way, it's dazzling what goes on here.
Right.
So here's a little bit about being busy here. So 8 classes. I mean, 4. Well, you actually have filled in a couple of places.
That's right.
Moderating things. So
which was a lot of fun to do. By the way, I appreciate that opportunity.
Oh, sure. Well, they loved it, and of course, you have background in cultural apologetics,
right.
So that was one of the electives. Problem of evil. How could an all-powerful, all-good God let innocents suffer and things like that. Peace and War. I'm an old Army guy and 28 years in the Guard and Reserve, so I've taught that a lot. And then Work and Leisure. And actually I had, I had Adam Walters in. He was like a religion book guy at Powell's in, it's like one of those bookstores like the Strand in New York or Powell's in Portland. And I said, what's it like to work in a secular setting and then work here? And he was so good. So anyway, there was that. And then the history of philosophy, ancient, medieval, modern, contemporary, with the same students all the way through. And so lecturing to that's a lot of work. But we're just starting here. So on Fridays you have recitations, and they bring little prompts and springboards, and we break up into small groups. And then on Friday we have Disputatio. And by the way, more Latin here than I had in a lot of my life, and it's wonderful. These guys learn Latin their first for all year long. And I knew you could graduate summa cum laude, magna cum laude, o laude, and o laude how cum. But they're really sophisticated on this. So that's really fun. And I love etymology. They learn Greek and they learn some Hebrew. So sometimes I'll stay after class and say, okay, where does odometer come from? It's from Hodos and Metron. Where does sarcophagus come from? Sarx, Farein, and so it's fun to work with people who know the language. But after Disputatio, everybody goes home, but not the faculty. We go up to Bridget, and then we talk to the guy another hour, which is quite a privilege. We have faculty meetings every Tuesday at lunch at noon. I'm used to once a month. I mean, every week they would have it. Every month I was used to that, and now it's weekly. And then we have, what do we call this? We have faculty gatherings. So we meet at Chris Schleck's or Tim Griffith's house, and we talk about each other's papers. Music events. Oh, mercy. Sometimes I think Herb puts together a magnificent program like every week or something. So they have box lunch my wife goes to. And then when I came in, they had sort of like battle songs. They had a whole series out here. I think it was the Reformed Church down toward Clarkston. And then we had one on morning over at the, I think, was it at the Nazi Dome, the Nazarene Church? Yes. And all through you have recitals. And I even heard our president and board member, Doug Wilson, sing Buffalo Springfield the other night. They had a kind of a old dad's rock band at the New Art.
Dad's band.
And he was saying, Dad's band, and he was saying, there's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there saying, you got to beware. Hey, what's that sound? And there he is with a guitar. So he used to be a rock guy. Speaking of rock guy, when I was at Wheaton, I moderated a panel of rock guys so that the president could feel comfortable about having Christian rock on campus. 50 years ago, Larry Norman was there, but Randy Stonehill. Well, Randy Stonehill shows up at Christ Church.
Yes.
So music is just everywhere. And actually our neighbor, Mark Reagan, directs music at Christ Church. And so we have meals together, and then he rehearses the congregation for Christ Church. And we go down, and it's like being in choir band. I mean, he'll stop us and scold us and help us along, and it's exhilarating. So anyway, music is everywhere. And then you have theater. So I went to Rutgers, saw that. Let's see, another thing I did, I lectured in Lagos some, and then, hall competitions. They have competitions in art, they have culinary competitions, rugby, track. Going to those is amazing. Then I get interviewed by a wonderful man with flames and crowns, cross-politic. Then there's one called This Dude, so I interviewed with that. And then there are Purian events and receptions, and this Doug Tenapple, we knew him back in Franklin, Tennessee, so we got to catch up with him a bit. I wrote something for Fight, Laugh, Feast, wrote a thing about, wait till next year, a book review for the library blog. Dining, this is the most hospitable place I've ever been in my life. I think we have eaten in maybe 24 or maybe a couple of dozen faculty and student houses. You've been very kind to have us over, and some say after Easter service come over to our house and eat, or the other day a couple of faculty took me out to tap down the hall. It's just we're just feasting all over the place. The South is supposed to be very hospitable and warm, and it is, but wowzer, this is incredible. So anyway, we're just really deliciously worn out. By the way, my wife thought that she might sort of be, while I'm doing my thing, she might be up on the hill, reading books or something. Nancy Wilson has plugged her in with some wonderful ladies, and they brunch, and then she goes to the 1912 building and does exercise, and it's just one thing after another. It's
always something to do, yes.
It's always something to do.
You're absolutely right.
So every time, and then we had all the students at one time or another in our house, just in our little apartment. So we are a very happy couple dragging out of Moscow, going back to Nashville, and we're going to lie real still for about a week. But it's crazy. It's delicious.
Yes. Yeah. And you were able to keep up with it.
We did. Now, we don't have kids. I mean, a number of the guys will have 6 or 7 kids, and they can't up and go watch the rugby game. So we're just old folks up on the hill. So what's playing tonight? Well, we'll go down to the senior class plow sharpening contest or something. I mean, there's just always something going on. Yes. So that's been fun.
Yeah, it's so interesting to get immersed in this, because I mean, when we were driving into Moscow for the first time, this is the smallest town I've ever lived in. I've always been a big city guy, and I quite like smaller towns, I must say. But I'm so surprised at how much goes on in such a small town. There's just always something happening, and it's extraordinary. And we've kind of had to pick our battles.
Well, absolutely. And you've got
You know.
3 wonderful kids.
You're right.
There's something else going on that we've done.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But it's been a lot of fun, and we've enjoyed it. And you were speaking about hospitality a moment ago. It really is extraordinary. Just the culture of hospitality here is truly extraordinary, and leaves very deep impressions. Honestly, everyone is just so kind and warm.
Exactly.
And we felt at home very quickly when we arrived here. So, Dr. Coppenger, of course, you were teaching at New St. Andrews College. That's the big reason you were out here.
Right.
What was your experience like in the classroom? How did you find or think of the NSA students that you had time engaging with?
They're the most interesting people. By the way, they're winsome students. I mean, if you're teaching, like I'll teach some in a secular school, or even substitute teaching in high schools when I was a church planter, and some are a delight, and others you watch your back or something, or they just are. These folks are, I say kids. When you're 76, someone 50s
Right.
year
I
old
like
was a
to
kid.
remind you often that we're roughly the same age.
Right. Wait till you turn 30. I'm just saying. So anyway, they're really delightful, but they're really interesting. I mean, boy, they are not cookie cut at all. I mean, there is a dress code, and so they present themselves well, and they're polite, and they actually believe the Bible, and they're serious about it. And what a refreshment is to have that. Now in seminary, you have that as well. But this is these are gratifying people. Boy, they are all over the map. One guy was an MMA fighter, I found out, in my Peace and War course. And so I didn't cross him. I figured he could take me down.
Did he get good grades throughout? Because,
Yeah, he did. I did what I had to protect myself. Actually, he could take me down, but of course, at my age, most of the girls could take me down too. Throw me to the ground. But anyway, so there's that. We have a missionary kid. She's a Brit, but she's a missionary kid, and she's rushed back to Senegal this last week, I think, and then she'll be back here to do Tiny Heartbeats, and that's where they go to Seattle and and acquaint people with what's happening in abortion, but also with the gospel. And they're exhilarated when they come back. They are so fired up. I was talking about Joy Anderson, but then that's the Jackson Neighbors and others. And they come back and they're so fired up. I think they're going to make heaven if they don't run past it. I mean, they're brimming with testimony. So there is that. I didn't even mention Jason Greaser took a number of us, I think about 30 of us, up on the campus at the University of Idaho to witness. And so we had tracts and we wandered around for 3 hours and talk to people about the gospel. So it's great to see that. And that's another activity, the Saturday morning. But yeah, I noted a couple of other things. Let's see. We have some IT nerds, they'll come and do their one-on-one. Oh, that's another thing. One-on-one finals where you talk to them for 30 minutes. That's time consuming and really interesting. I mean, they have very interesting lives. So we have cellists, one guy is a great runner. He's a sprinter, but he's also a great cellist. And you just think of the span of what they've got. They're from all over. I didn't know if they would all just be sort of panhandle folks and a few expat Californians. But in my class, I have people from the state I was raised in, Arkansas. There are Louisiana people, there are Texas people, North Carolina people, folks up east. Of course, faculty members. I think Jordan Dorney's from Long Island, and it's a very cosmopolitan crowd. They're from all over the place. Sharp, they know Latin. What's that about? They put up with me, and they're really very kind. In the fall, there was some competition up in Spokane, I think, and they said in my philosophy class, 6 or 7 of us are going to be gone. Don't be shocked, on Wednesday. So when they got back, I said, sing something you've got. And so I think one of them went over and just picked out a chord on the piano. And the whole class sang beautifully. And it's the sort of thing you could almost record. So this is the singingest bunch of people, too, and lovely voices. I don't think I've ever had that experience before.
Yes, same.
Yeah. So anyway, they're a delight, and when I pick up on those one-on-one conversations, one of them be writing in the arts, and another about what's proper in games. They have a bunch of names. I'm just thinking of the old days when my boys were doing Super Mario Brothers and stuff, but they're off into the universe now, so they're big on AI and AT and others. I mentioned once that I'd done some work in law, and I had a case book that has court cases, and you play off of them to get into philosophy. And I said, anybody interested in looking at a law library? And I think there were 5 of them. After class, we jumped in the van, went up to the University of Idaho, and we, I think, have some budding lawyers. And another, I brought up the idea, what about being a pastor? And, I hadn't thought about, think about that. So anyway, just a lot of fun. Then I got a batch of sophomores in work and leisure, and I saw some of them in Ruthergore and see them all over creation, and we had the best time just working through all kinds of stuff like, how's God calling you? Or do we work in order to rest, or rest in order to work? So it's been exhilarating to me. Yeah. Peace and war, guys know tons about war. I mean, I'll just throw an example out, and he says, yes, but what about, the sub-general on the front here on that date? And they're nerds, and they're nerds in everything I teach. So it's fun to have that. The colleagues, by the way, in philosophy, the guys have degrees in philosophy, and Mitch has one from Notre Dame, worked under Al Plantinga, has written great books. Dave Talcott was at Indiana and has written some fine stuff. And so I'm in a learned crowd. I mean, we have Oxford people, and we have folks from Dallas and different places. Just it's a great workout.
Oh, that's wonderful. And because you've been teaching for a very long time.
I'm afraid about 50 years off and on.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
And of course, you've been in several circles. You're a legend.
Come on.
In many ways. I mean, I know you're not going to say that about yourself.
Pariah is the word, I think. But thank you, Lennox.
No, it's true. You've written your own books. You've met all kinds of interesting people in your time, and I think that NSA was really privileged and honored to have you.
Well, you're kind.
With us this year.
You're very kind.
Which is extraordinary. Yeah. Sharon's experience seems to also have been quite rich
yes.
in her time here.
Yes. Other than the fact that our kids that are not overseas now live in that area, other than that fact, I think she would just say, you go on back to Nashville, I'm staying here. But it's easier to drive to Dallas to Atlanta and to Washington there. It's a long way out here. But boy, she loves it here. And if you had her here, she'd say, well, let me count the ways. She went to Deary and to this yarn place here, and all of a sudden she decided she needed to have a loom. So now she's doing back and forth, making tea towels, and she's knitting like crazy. But she'll do one thing with, a brunch group, or she'll go to an exercise class, or go to a knitting class. And our church, by the way, has been a joy to us. They let these Baptists in for a year, and so we go to a Baptist church. The doctrinal statement was like, I know CREC has Baptistic people in there as well, but the doctrinal statement lifts that, paedobaptism, and I said, well, I'm Baptist. I said, but I won't hack on it, and it turns out they've been very gracious, and we have, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 NSA students over there, and one of them preached the other day. So we've got that whole fellowship as well. By the way, this town, let me just talk about the town a little bit.
Yes.
So I think of this, I've worked with universities, either in campus ministry or graduate study, and they're embedded in a big metropolitan area. So I went to Vanderbilt for grad school. Well, Nashville and Old Hickory and, everything around about to Murfreesboro and Franklin, it's Hendersonville. It's just a mass, and here's a school in with a lot of other schools. And then I was in campus ministry when I was a church planner up at Northwestern University. Well, that's kind of Chicago. Northwestern, Evanston's North Shore. And so you're blended into a whole lot of stuff. This is the craziest place. It's like a magic island. It's kind of like Bali or the Isle of Wight or something, because you have not only really strong universities, Idaho and Washington State, but of course, New St. Andrews.
Yes.
And then all around it is the Palouse. And you come in through this farmland, and all of a sudden here's this, I don't know, the Shangri-La or something like that. And by the way, it's really interesting in that it's a lively place, because New St. Andrews, I love New St. Andrews, and with Doug and the others who they don't wet their finger to put it in the wind to see which way is it blowing. How do we ingratiate ourselves in every respect? But it's not just a compound of people who, kind of like a little Mormon thing out in the Utah desert where we get all our people. This is a cosmopolitan place. Really, and as I walk down here, you'll have the gay flags and all this kind of stuff in the kind of the university setting. There's some really strong Christians I know at Idaho, by the way. A couple of them go to our church. But still, university towns are quite often, what do they call Evanston? The People's Republic of Evanston. I mean, they throw the Boy Scouts out of the United Way because they won't have gay scoutmasters as back in the day, or we don't have Veal, or we're a nuclear-free zone, or whatever's going around. Well, this place does have those influences of, the world, and yet you've got this very strong Christian influence too. I mean, it's not just at the school, it's at Lagos as well. That's another thing I've done, lectured at Lagos. So every time I turn around, it's just something cool to do.
Yes.
But still, that mix here, how folks speak the truth in love or speak the falsehood and barely suppressed resentment or something, but it keeps us on our toes. It's a good mix. Yeah. And then you drive, I don't know, 8 miles or so one way or the other, and the next thing you know, you're in endless fields of grain and canola and lentils and garbanzo beans and wheat, and it's there's nothing like it.
There really is. Like those rolling hills, I don't think I'll ever get enough of them.
Yeah.
They're just extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you're saying about Moscow as a town, because many people, especially Christian folk who have heard of Moscow, think of Moscow as a sort of Christian silo.
Yeah.
Where, just Christians get together and they have it nice and easy and it's convenient. But we're actually up against quite a lot here.
Yeah.
And some of there are people who hate.
Oh, absolutely.
Christ Church,
we learned that
Moscow.
the first week. We had a conversation with a lady in the Walmart parking lot, and we were waiting for someone to try to back out, and they were making several tries at it. So we got to talking, and when she heard where we were from,
Yes.
It was kind of like, that sort of thing. And my sister-in-law was here the other day at first farmer's market, the first day, which is an amazing thing.
Yes.
And so she sat down with my wife, and they were talking. Someone came up, and they found out where they're from. And then all of a sudden, he's pushing, whatever his thing is. And his wife came up, and she heard, she's like, no. I mean, so there is that element. And why, I think sometimes, why do the heathen rage? And the thing is, they think, oh, you're trying to have all these kids and take over demographically, and like, well, yeah, but having kids is like a good thing.
Right.
And it's not as though they're going to try to institute the Levitical law or something. Right. I look at these rainbow things up on the hill, and I think, okay, would it be a good thing if everybody thought that homosexuality was cool and no problem with it? Oh yeah, that'd be great. Well, then you really want to have hegemony of thought. Well, what's wrong with Christians saying we'd like for the Christian perspective? Exactly. But no, we're not talking about a theonomical hammer here. We're just saying it'd be great to permeate. And it's so disarming. I'll go eat lunch at various places, the co-op or whatever, and I might even wear my NSA cap or something. I'm here for a year, and most of them they'll engage you. Well, I'm a student at Idaho, and yeah, that's cool. And so I think they have some virulent people with a following, and it's kind of like for some of these guys, you just say, put it on our resume if they hate us. I mean,
Yes.
Jesus had some people who hated him too.
Exactly. Yeah, he had a couple of those.
They had a few. Yeah. And by the way, I will say this. it's not monolithic in the classroom. That I called this guy. I worked with him on a website out of New York. His name is Tim Edwards, and he was the provost here. Yes. And he's gone. He's in England now. Right. So I called him in England. I said, they're talking. Tell me, is it like gotcha every time you turn around? And obviously if you're denying the Trinity or whatever, they're going to have a word of prayer with you. Right. But he said, no, there is real range and diversity in the classroom within the circuit. Yes. So, here and there I'll find something. Generally, I'm in sync with folks, but I'm reminded of something that Francis Schaeffer was doing when I taught at Wheaton years ago. And by the way, when he came to campus, I got to grab him and Edith to come into my bioethics class. And Francis was not real well by that time. And I remember when I asked Edith after Chap asked him, Edith kind of, like, you're going to wear my husband out and kill him. But anyway, both of them came to class, and he had that How Should We Then Live series. Yes. And it was quite impressive. I mean, I was raised on Christian literature being hinds feet in high places, or utmost for his highest, or devotional things, or through greats of splendor. And this guy comes out in funny Swiss pants or something, and he's slapping Kant around, and that was exhilarating. I mean, he was quite extraordinary with the whole Labrie thing. Right. But anyway, there was something. All our colleagues in philosophy. Steve Evans had his degree from Yale, Art Holmes from Northwestern, and anyway, there are others. And the churches would have us in to interpret how then should we live. I mean, they'd show this back, you have to see it in an encyclopedia. They had movies that ran on reels like that. And so they would show one, and we'd lead the discussion. Well, we loved the fact that the series was on and agreed with much of it, but every one of us had a little bit of a hitch. Art was bigger on Aquinas than Francis. Right. Schaeffer kind of walks in, here's Aquinas scribbling away, and he kind of ranks him down a little bit. And then Steve Evans was a Kierkegaard scholar, and Francis made it sort of like, okay, here you had Kierkegaard, and the next thing you have Sartre and Death in the Streets. Right. And I could appreciate some modern art, and not, so here's Michelangelo's David, the next thing you know, you've got Insanity. So we were just saying, yeah, but, and so I've come up with this sort of thing I call the Mayday fallacy. There's a great television show. It's called Mayday. The Smithsonian Channel runs it. It's based, it's called Air Disasters. It was Mayday in Canada. They made the actual original. So they have a plane crash. And, you can have the guys say, buckle up, take the position, like that. And then they go back, and for the rest of the hour, I think it is, they analyze the voice, cockpit recorders, and what happened. Well, it turns out there are kind of three things that do it. Some is a mechanical failure. I mean, they found, I think a British jet had square windows, and there was a weakness at the corners. And so now we have oval windows, but it kind of came apart. So, and sometimes they have just a bad screw or something like that. So something flawed in the aircraft. Another is pilot error, or even pilot perfidy or evil. Some guy just, Allahu Akbar, flies into a mountain. But sometimes they're chatting with the flight attendant or something, or, horsing around, and the next thing you know, they're not reading so pilot error. And the third is just sort of external, like a bird strike, and takes out your engine. So anyway, there is a way of thinking. Francis seems to say it was like pilot error. So you get Descartes, the next thing you know, you're crashing. You get so and so, and and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think sometimes it's pilot error. For example, Paul says it's by grace, not faith. Okay, look, he caused antinomianism. By grace by faith instead of works. And so you're like, well, whoa. I mean, don't blame him for that. That was pilot error. Somebody did that kind of thing. So sometimes there's a strong tendency to do historical stuff. Like I was at one of those faculty things, and somebody mentioned Descartes, and it was almost like, oh, don't even say that word. I think, whoa, wait a second. Just because somebody got into this, it doesn't mean that. And because I think, like I say, you could say, boy, I wish Paul hadn't lifted up grace so much, because now we got the works thing. You can do that with sort of anybody. Plato, Karl Popper says that's where you get closed societies and this and that. So yes, there are tendencies. I mean, I when I was doing kind of a history of Northwestern University's spiritual life. It was strongly, devoutly Methodist, and then there's a President Marcy who started opening it up to that, and you could just say at that point it went down secular. So yeah, there are slopes, slippery slopes, but I just think sometimes to say, oh no, when he did that, then everything went to heck. I think, well, yeah, maybe he wasn't as bad as you think. So sometimes I'll push that back, or sometimes I'll say, I come from a more empiricist, pragmatist group, like the William James and the George Barclay and this and that, and others are more idealistic or more classical, and so occasionally I'll say, I'm not quite sure what atemporal means. I think God's everlasting, and like, okay, what do you got? So I find myself when sometimes I'm sort of singing a slightly different song from, it's not like, okay, come here, like you've got to shut up, let's go. No, it's just like we're grown-ups and we're doing scholarship.
Exactly. And you can all learn from each other as well.
You can learn. I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
That's excellent. Let's talk about some of your classes very specifically and kind of break them down one by one. So you had, of course, we did the cultural apologetics class, which again, it was a ton of fun just spending time with your students and lending some of my thoughts and leading some of the recitations as well. Yeah. But what's your general synopsis for how you approach your cultural apologetics class? Well,
out of the blue, Francis Schaeffer got us into that. Honestly. So thank you again, Francis. Yeah, exactly. And there are others who've done this sort of thing. I've had, it's funny. You get invitations to write, and I had a prof at Vanderbilt who was talking about two other profs. I think I've said this before to you, but he said one prof asked the other one, "Do you know Sanskrit?" And he said, "No, I haven't taught it yet." Well, that seems backwards. You're like, out of the overflow you teach. No, you get the assignment and you backfill. So we were talking about, I was in Romania talking with a fellow who was doing editing a series. Somehow we got to talking about these things, and he said, "Could you write a book in this series for Broadman and Holman?" And so I did one on moral apologetics, and I think we might have used that book. But you're talking about how the Christian faith the ethic is splendid, and the ethicists are splendid, and the fruit is splendid. So anyway, out of the blue, it's a crazy thing. A guy said, "Hey, you have a sabbatical coming up, don't you?" And I thought, I don't know. Is there a sabbatical at Southern? I looked in the catalog and said, if you've been here 7 years or whatever it was, 6 years. And so I went to the dean and I said, hey, and he said, well, the trustees say you've got to have a book contract before you do it. Okay. So I went away sorrowing like the rich young ruler. And anyway, I just said, well, I don't have a book contract. And then a Scottish publisher named Christian Focus came in, and they said, we're doing a 10-part apologetic series, and here's a title. Would you write to it? If Christianity is so good, why are Christians so bad? I don't think anybody else wanted that title, but I said, okay, so I'll go back in with a deal. Look, I got a contract, and said, okay, you get a sabbatical. But at any rate, that really got me into that track. Okay. And then crazy thing, while I'm here, I was here at ETS, I ran into a guy who's in a campus parachurch kind of ministry, and he said, I saw that book. We have little booklets about the fourth that size. Could you do one? We'll just flip the title. If Christians are so bad, why is Christianity so good? And I said, okay, so I carved that down. And then they came out, and the cover has like a nun smoking a cigarette. It's like, oh no. But I get prompted, why don't you write on this? Because I would do more in aesthetics typically, or more in general ethics. But, just people say, can you do it? Like, okay, like being here. You just show up, But yeah, so yeah, we talked about, sometimes I say, I do a couple of things. One is like the automobiles. You have all the automobiles that have been produced typically, like Ford, Rolls, Volvo, Renault, whatever. And I say, what's in common here? The really quality ones. And it's where Christianity has really had strong sway. So there's no animist automobile. There's no Muslim automobile. Like, hey, this year let's get a Somali automobile. It's the theory. So I know I mentioned things like that, and then we talk about if the Pilgrims hadn't landed on Plymouth Rock, let's just say it was some sort of Muslim bark or Buddhist thing or whatever. America wouldn't be it. Europe wouldn't be it if it weren't for the Judeo-Christian influence. So we talk about that sort of thing and the fruitfulness of when Christianity does its thing. That's part of what we do.
That's very good. Another class you taught was, of course, you mentioned it already, but peace and war.
Yeah.
And you spent some time in the National Guard.
Yeah.
Some time, was many years.
Yeah, 28
actually.
years.
Yeah, that's right.
No, when I went in, everybody kind of went in because we had a draft. So I got a little ribbon called the National Defense something ribbon. And it means you're in the military when there was a war. Okay. Vietnam was ours. We called it Alive in 65, essentially. So the question was, how do you go in? So I went into ROTC, Army ROTC at our school. And by the time I got to infantry school, they said, we're winding down the war. We don't need all of you in the regular Army. So if you would give us a longer commitment and go into the Guard or reserves, then we'll make a deal. And I was in grad school at the time at Vandy, and I said, well, I'll take it. So anyway, I thought I'd be in for 6 or 8 years. Turned out to be 28, and great experience. I never got shot at. I never got deployed. On training exercises here or there at Fort Hood or what have you, I'd see people die in accidents or helicopters or things happen. But I had a wonderful time, 11 tours in the Pentagon, some out in Fort Irwin, Campbell, Knox, Hood. So I knew a little bit about it, went through a lot of courses, but I know some people who were in it seriously. My father-in-law was a bombardier in World War II, and my eldest son, was in the Iraq War twice, so also picked up. And we've had, we had a speaker come and talk about just war, and I think it was Paul Miller. Yes. And so it's a livelier topic than I thought, and I think we had a dozen in there, and really engaging talk. I mean, it's been the last one I've done. But no, we talk about the justice of getting in war and just war. Like, you don't just seize Hudson Bay so the president can have lakefront property or something, and you don't commit suicide. You don't have like Liechtenstein invade the Soviet Union. I mean, don't be stupid. How you conduct a war, immoral weapons, protecting innocence, that kind of thing, and then the justice of getting out of war. We don't just set it up for the next war. Exactly. So we talk about things like that, a lot of stuff.
That's very good. Another one was work and leisure.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm going to write a little thing about this.
I'm really looking forward to that one. In fact, just on that, one of the things that I've been thinking about is just how much you can tell about a culture by assessing how they treat their leisure. Yeah. I mean, work tells it says one thing, but leisure is actually very telling. Yeah. And I think I saw that in some of your notes as well, which I found quite fascinating. But do you want to just break down the idea of work and leisure and your approach to teaching it? What are you trying to underscore?
Yeah. I mean, of course, we have the Protestant work ethic, and even people outside. I've seen writings from South America and from Europe. So what is it about these Protestants? And sometimes they say they're just trying to prove to themselves that they're among the elect. I mean, they take all kinds of weird stuff. Right. But we are more industrious, actually, and we have senses of calling and like that. But the leisure thing, Aristotle said that's really the mark of a man, that he does leisure well. One of the questions is, do we work in order to rest? Like, finally, I can retire now, I can go fishing and play golf. Or do we recoup on the Sabbath or just in retire so that we can get back at it? Do we have leisure to do that? The question, like, there was work in Eden, do we have work in heaven? What are we going to do? That kind of deal. But we talk about, Melville said something that's kind of interesting. He said, back in the day when they were hunting whales, like Moby Dick, he said the guy, the harpooner would row out too. They're just sweating. And then finally he stands up in the boat, takes the harpoon, and he's just so tired, and he goes bonk or something, or he misses the whale. Yeah. And they said, we're going to have to let the harpoon guy ride. Right. So I don't know, he's just doing his nails or something, and he looks like he's a bum. But in fact, he's strong to do it. So we have to rest. You have to unstring the bow. There are different ways to say that. But there is just great delight in leisure. So I did this course on it. I started teaching at Wheaton years ago in the 70s, but Southern had me do an online course. And so as I would go around and film people working, like my wife and I went half a mile under a coal mine, under a mountain in Kentucky, and talked to coal miners with our lights on them. Wow. Yeah. And so I talked to a motel maid in Arkansas, and, you know, what's the hardest part about your work? Cleaning up hair, you know? I mean, it's really funny. But anyway, I took the camera and I filmed. I went to Wrigley Field and shot Clayton Kershaw for the Dodgers playing the Cubs, and then sauntering is one. Actually, the word saunter, it's not exactly sure, but one definition I saw, it's based on the French santerre, which means Holy Land. And as people would work hard and hard, but then they would go to the Holy Land and just walk around it, just absorbing refreshment in the God's deal. So I do sauntering, I do browsing in a bookstore, just horsing around like that, like, as I said, going to ball games. But I say these are places where you just take a deep breath. And also, you know, what in terms of entertainment. And I have a thing about godly entertainment. It's not as though everything has to be, now I'm going to read the commentary on Romans, you know. I mean, there's a place to, I think, we watch BritBox some and just see guys solve murder mysteries in Liverpool or something. I mean, I think there's a place for that. But you just refresh yourself and under the Lord and thank Him for that. And boy, He gives us a Sabbath. They didn't have that in Mao's China or something, but God has it.
Yeah. I find that interesting, especially as you think about this next season of life that you'll be entering into. Yeah. Rumor has it that you'll be getting on your private jet and living on your yacht.
Yeah, right. We got to
frequent all kinds of places around the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess just what does this next phase of your life look like? What are you hoping to do? Where will you be?
Yeah. You know, I thought this phase of my life would be slightly different. I brought, I think, about 150 books for writing projects. And I thought, oh, good, I'll teach and then I can write and be, oh, no, sir. You know, so I'm going to just take them back now, but I've got writing projects to do. I get hit with little writing projects. So while I'm here this year, American Spectator, Truth Script, Christ Overall, Icon, Biblical Manhood and Womanhood. Now I get to write for you. Right. What was it? Fight, Laugh, Feast. Right. River Sumter had me write something there. Right. So I do those little things, but I've got some book projects. And in June, when I get back, a couple of pastors have asked me to come in and preach for them. So there's that. I just, you know, I just want to wear out, not rust out. Right. And we like to travel. Incidentally, on the way back, we're going to see the Yankees play the Rockies in Denver. We're going to see St. Louis play the Diamondbacks in St. Louis. So we're going to be baseballing our way across.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, I just, you know, things just turn up. Can you be an interim pastor? Okay. Hey, let's go see the grandkids. And my daughter's teaching says, hey, can you talk about the Iliad in my class? Like, okay, have you got a copy? So yeah, that's kind of how it works.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, you seem to have a very spontaneous spirit about you as well.
It's just fun to pick up
fun
on what's going on.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your sense of humor as well. It's a great sense of humor, you know.
I think I got some of it from my dad. He just said funny things. He says, you know, that's fine. You're finer than frog's hair. I just, you know, what's that? Right. But yeah, I love comedians. We've discovered this Nate Bargatze thing. He's from the Nashville area. Yes. But I just think that's just part of the good life to be. I talk a little bit about the divine comedy, that a tragedy is where things are sailing along well, and then, oh no, you know, the Oedipus the king, or it's like things are terrible, and then like, oh my goodness, the reveal, and we're in a divine comedy, and it's all working out.
Right.
So
yeah, it really is. Yeah. It really is. Any final thoughts in terms of anything you'd want people in NSA to remember or just know? Any words of encouragement or admonition?
Well, I stand in awe of this place. By the way, the one reason I can do so many things is that I have no standards. The thing that'll kill you is excellence, But if you have no standards, you can cover a lot of ground. Right. So, no, I hope that's not totally true. But we were out at Doug Wilson's house with trustees maybe 2 months ago, and we're kind of bouncing around. Faculty were suggesting things, and I think Jason said, maybe more evangelistic stuff, and he's a practitioner. I taught at Wheaton for 7 years full time, and then came back to teach part time. And they're not the Wheaton there's some wonderful things and people there, but it's not the Wheaton of the 70s. Yeah. So they've kind of become a little cooler then. And so I remember. Somebody once said this, and I passed this on to trustees. It's just like, don't just do something, stand there, instead of don't just stand there, do something. So, don't let the world of Moscow and beyond. Now, sure, if you're making a mistake or overdoing something, you can learn and things make changes, but just be who you are in terms of like, this really is who we are. Boy, I just think of all the kind of building the tough thing with the government and trying to get this Tyrian permit, all that just hassle. Right. You get here, and I just say, just trust God, be prayed up. You're doing it, and with grace, and He'll give you every single day what you need. But don't get weary in well doing. I would say just continue to encourage. An interplay of ideas within the corral of what's acceptable. I really do think, I think I told you this before, I do think people have a kind of a curious notion of Moscow. When I decided to come down here from visiting a friend in Post Falls, I thought, oh my goodness, this is like Ruby Ridge or the Unabomber. Moscow's, that's not a nice name. And then it's in Panhandle. And as I came down here, I told you, the banner said, "Welcome back, Vandals," and I thought, this is a tough town, welcome hoods or some thugs. But I found it was a mascot. Right. But just the treasure, this treasure island is quite an asset. And I would say, be writing, get your stuff. Doug he expresses himself so well in the books, but generate good stuff. And I just think it's a secret that people have yet to discover. I mean, I feel like I've landed on, well, whatever, Britain or something. It's a big island, but like, are you kidding? Is this a place? Right. And you go out here and you're in the ocean. Here you're in the ocean. Well, here you're in the Palouse. But the assets and the resources, and the spiritual center of the universe apparently is Panhandle ice cream. I have become fatter eating that stuff.
You and I have met each other a few times in Panhandle.
That's exactly right. I saw you in there anyway.
That's right. That's terrific. Any ways that we can be praying for you going forward?
Wow. Well, I think hauling a U-Haul trailer home with books I didn't use here, and actually, my favorite bookstores, not only, of course, Sword and Trowel is a dream, right. What they get there and what Adam's done there, but I also like to pick up stuff at Goodwill, and the discard bin out at the recycling center, okay. By the Rose Hours in that area. Yes. I go down and root around, there's several of us, and like, oh, this is a book, and so I'll give one to a colleague or put it. So anyway, that we won't like blow up with a trailer somewhere in the Rockies or whatever, just safe travel. Yeah. But I think maybe just keeping my wits about me and enough energy to just keep writing and writing. I think that's kind of what I do. Yeah. And I'm thinking, I've done some teaching where you go in for a week and you go like 9 to 5. I don't know if I got the stamina to do that anymore, but just little bits and pieces. Sure. But just to be fruitful. Mm. And I married way over my head, and to be tied in with the most delightful, energetic, supporter, godly Proverbs 31 woman. As long as I've got her, she'll keep me cooking too.
Oh, praise God for that. Well, Dr. Coppenger, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for just an incredible year. I will I will miss your company a great
Well,
deal.
me too. Well, you keep cooking. You're amazing.
Certainly.
And if I could have been what you are at your age, I would have had a more admirable life. So I salute you.
I'm just trying to catch up with you.
Oh, come on. Oh, stop. Okay. Thanks, man.